Right. What's up, Nubians? Welcome to techn00bians, part of the Geekish Network. This is your weekly deep dive into video games steeped in blackness, but you knew that already. So with me today, I have Shanae.
Hey, folks.
And I got Travis.
Y'all gonna have to deal with it.
We always do, man. We always do.
Yeah, but there's more of me today, so y'all don't have to deal with it.
Well, there's just the three of us here today, so I mean, you might be in trouble today, Travis.
I'm outnumbered finally.
Yes, yeah, finally.
Yeah, we can just call it. We've reached the mountaintop. We can just call it. So, as you folks know, I am Cherie. I'm your host. And for those of you who don't know, techn00bians is your weekly video game live stream and podcast hosted by Black technology professionals, where we discuss the what, when, and how you can get into this world of technology, specifically video games. And we are here, of course, to inspire, sustain, and nurture successful creative technologists in their pursuit of Black excellence and content development. Y'all know the drill by now. But yeah, speaking of knowing the drill, we usually kick things off with the news, and then we have our long topic. So I just want to mention today's long topic. We're going to do a reprise of what we discussed last week, which was around the mobile industry. So we're going to have a part 2, and I have given the subtitle to this part 2 of whales, space whales, and minnows. So stick around to find out what the heck that means. Also, everyone on the call probably is like, what the heck does that mean? We will all have, everyone will learn what it means at the same time.
We all got theories,
yeah. But before we get into that, let us kick things off with our normal tech and gaming news. So as I like to call our techn00bians. So Travis, you've got a story for us. Why don't you kick this off for us?
Okay, so one of my favorite games, bar none. I'll go even so far as to say one of my favorite games, period. Actually,
yeah.
Ghost of Tsushima is getting a multiplayer mode, but a completely standalone multiplayer mode. So if you guys are into Ghost of Tsushima, you'll know that Ghost of Tsushima didn't ship with a multiplayer mode. And then they went back, and really polished a rather, grandiose multiplayer mode. I mean, it's really, really nice.
It's solid. It's good.
Yeah. So much so that some people don't want to play the single player mode for whatever reason, but we won't say names, Shanae, because that's not,
it's not how we do, right?
That's not really how we do, right?
Oh, you were talking about Shanae. I was ratting myself out too.
Well, I know. So I decided
that's actually both of us.
and so, yeah. So the games. So it's going to cost $19. Okay. And it's available on PS4 and PS5. It's actually kind of it's kind of cool. So players who decided they want more in their lives will be able to upgrade actually from the multiplayer mode to the standalone version, if they want to. Personally, I got a lot more out of that Ghost of Tsushima multiplayer mode than I thought, because and a lot of it had to do with the narrator, because when you're playing through a game, for example, and you're listening to the audio, and someone's narrating, but doing it accurately.
Yeah. And
it's not a Madden game, or it's not an MLB game, right? Where, you expect it in sports games, right?
Right.
But when you're in a multiplayer environment, in a game like this, and you hear someone who sounds an awful lot like Mako from Conan, right? Explaining to you what is going on in the game, and you're like, oh my God, this is the game sees me. Personally, I would have paid $20 for that, but it brings up some interesting questions. And before I continue with those questions, what do you guys think?
I'm happy to get any more Ghost of Tsushima. I know Travis was trying to throw a barb at me, but he also hit my sister with that
I was an innocent bystander.
Listen, I am comfortable with the fact that I understand I am not going to finish the 60-hour game, right? But I've put a lot of hours into it. I really enjoy the gameplay of it. And I think, like you said, the multiplayer mode as it exists, the Legends mode is brilliant. It's really smart. The meta game is really fun. It allows people with like lots of varying degrees of skills to get in there and have fun with other people and just have a really good time and stuff like that too. So I do still play that pretty frequently along with my sister and a few other friends. Travis, you should join us every once in a while, by the way, since you probably
I'm too good.
Whatever. Well, then come down to our level. Yeah. Like I said,
well, help us lots of people at different levels. Yeah, help us build levels.
You can't play at Nightmare. Just join us in Silver Tier, all right? But no, I'm excited about this. I think it's interesting too. $20, like, you know, I know when I first announced that people were just like, what? You know, why are they doing this and why are they releasing something so fat? Listen, $20 is actually about $10 less than I thought it was going to cost. $10 to $20 less than I thought it was going to cost. And I think it's really, I always find these kinds of things interesting because I see them as a bit of an experiment too, to see what the marketplace is willing to bear. So, I mean, really, this goes back to like one of our themes that we've said, people vote with their wallets, right? Like people were trying to see, like the folks over at Sucker Punch and the publishers. Is it published by Sony? It's published by Sony.
Yeah, Sucker Punch is on
second party, right? So Sony and Sucker Punch, they'll see how this works out, right? And it's one of their premier titles too. So I think it's going to be an interesting test balloon.
Yeah. So they're technically first party because they're
first party. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but for me, this is interesting on another level because we're always talking about how to market, games to people, and we sort of had this conversation before about like, and I think it was last week, right? Where usually like the typical sort of gamer mentality was back in the day, like if your title was sub 60, like what's wrong with it, right? And now it's interesting because we have all these different sort of pricing tiers that people can, enjoy product for. Now, the great thing for me is I think that if this catches on, the best thing about it would be like maybe I could actually buy a Call of Duty game and just buy a single player game instead because I'm not playing multiplayer at all.
Yeah, exactly, right. And when we start talking about that changes the way in which developers would build out their P&Ls, build out their development schedules, like what they would put out there in the marketplace. It gives players a lot more choice too. Now there might be who knows what will happen with this. I'm really interested to see how this works out. And like you said, when we move to this new console generation, the price finally went up for games. So we're now at $69.99 as the MSRP for this console generation, which is as a producer, it still doesn't make my P&Ls work, but the side comment on that, $70 is a lot of money for a lot of people, right? And if people want to just be able to get online and play a cool game, they've heard great things about with their friends, if they can find a PS5, then $20 is that gives them additional choices, right? So like I'm excited to see how this gets received and if it does really well and if that causes some changes in how other big multiplayer games or games that have big multiplayers and also single player offerings, how they respond as well. Yeah,
and I guess if I'm sorry, go ahead, Sri.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to mention I'm also interested to see. I also am a little like I guess I'm going to be a little cynical here, only in that if it does affect, and I don't know if this is what you all are talking about, but if it does affect like this trend here, and we start looking at like separating the multiplayer and single player experiences, which I think makes sense because there's some people who prefer the single player experience and some people who prefer the multiplayer experience. There's overlap, right? There's some people who prefer both, but I guess I'm just thinking about like what gamers will the backlash you're going to inevitably get from gamers because you get that so much backlash just for regular DLC. And now we're talking about like, we're going to cut out the multiplayer experience and have it be its own separate SKU. Like people are going to lose their minds.
Well, I don't.
I'm just saying people are going to lose their minds. That's all.
I don't think they're necessarily going to lose their mind because if you paid for the game itself, right? Then you pay for this multiplayer, you have it already, right? This is for people who maybe want to dip their toe in it, right? Yeah. And I think that this is a cool idea. And we always say this, and we preach this gospel here on our show, which is vote with your dollars. Right. Yeah. So make no mistake, people, Sony they're watching. Right. And if this goes over well, you're going to see more like this, because why not? Right. It's giving people what they want.
Also, this is an instance where, or at least what I'm interpreting it as, is an instance where it's not like you're never going to be able to like they're not suggesting taking the original game, Ghost of Tsushima, off the market or anything like that. If you want the single player and the multiplayer together, here it is right here, $7, go and buy it. But for folks who weren't really interested in that, or maybe just want to try it out for a little bit and try it with their friends and like sort of live in that moment of while the game is at its peak engagement, is $20 as an entry point, which feels a lot less like a lot less of an investment for something that you're not sure about or not sure how much time you put into. If I had to do it over again, I mean, I would probably still buy the $70 version, but yeah. but honestly, like I said, it's not a bad option for a lot of folks. The only thing I would think where might potentially get a little, where people might get a little itchy on it is if they start taking games and breaking them into lots of different parts and saying, hey, all these parts together, like, you can buy the $70 version that has everything, but if you buy them separately, it actually costs like $79 or something. The way that you get a little bit of discount when you buy everything together, but if you piecemeal it, it costs you a little bit more. You might wind up seeing that. I mean, that's like I said, I think I'm not arguing against it. I think it's a fair thing to potentially drive people towards making that the decision that's right for them instead of just a one size fits all. Because right now we basically have one size fits all.
Yeah. That is true. That's true. So, okay, I'm going to jump over here to the next story here, which I think is kind of interesting here. Let me drop this link in the chat. So, is anyone familiar with Exola? It's a payment gateway. Okay. Yes. So for folks who don't know them, they're a payment gateway, and they market almost exclusively to game companies. So they're used on like platforms like Valve, the Epic Game Store, Roblox uses them, Ubisoft, I think, and like there's several game companies that use them as a payment gateway. It's easier sometimes to go and contract with a separate company than to try and build out like a system that's going to have to accept payment information and have to be, subject to actual financial regulation there. So that's why a lot of game companies will do that, or companies in general. So recently, Exola laid off 150 of their employees, which is roughly 10% of the company. And they did this because they said they were basing their layoffs on quote unquote big data analysis of their activities. So essentially on August 3rd, this email was leaked. It was from the CEO and founder Alexander Agapitov. He's as a CEO and founder of Exola, and it read in part. I'm assuming it was in Russian because I know that the company was founded in Russia. So this is a translated part of the email. You received this email because my big data team analyzed your activities in Jira, Confluence, Gmail chats, documents, dashboards, and tagged you as unengaged and unproductive employees. Many of you might be shocked, but I truly believe Exola is not for you. Once again, thank you for your contribution. If you want to stay in contact with me, please write me a long letter about your observations, injustice, and gratitude. That was just part of the letter.
Update your Jira.
Yeah.
Wow.
Obviously, there was some blowback. Obviously, there was some blowback. And this gentleman, he held a press conference, like on social media, where he reportedly said that, he based the reasoning for the layoffs on like slowing company growth. He said that necessitated them slashing the payroll by 10%, and leadership decided to go with the lowest performance metrics, right? But then later he put like a comment on Twitter that just basically translated to work hard or F you. So, I mean, there's a little bit of mixed messaging here in terms of like, he's trying to like put this out here, then back it up a little bit, but then just like, okay, here's my true feelings. But yeah, no, I thought this was kind of interesting. Exola, they have offices in Ukraine. They have offices in Russia, South Korea. They're headquartered here in Los Angeles. But they also mentioned, the CEO, he also mentioned that he got this idea from Silicon Valley. He said they've been talking about it for over a year. And the way he put it, he said we looked at what Netflix, Harvard, and the Navy SEALs have. They constantly remove the bottom 10% and thus constantly improve the quality of human capital. That's how he framed it. And they said they plan to do this every 6 months. So I thought this was kind of interesting, right? Given that like we've been in the work from home world for the last 18 months, at least in this country, longer for some other places. And I think this was kind of like a lot of people's fears was that, if you go into a work from home kind of model, that you're going to have like kind of like, for lack of a better way of saying, like basically kind of spying on employees to try and gauge the level of productivity based off of just metrics of your engagement on specific apps. So I thought this was, kind of interesting to kind of hear about, here's a not game company, but like, a game adjacent company, which just explicitly said, yeah, we totally did that. That's exactly the reason we're doing it. And we plan to continue doing it. So what is folks' thoughts on this?
I have so many feelings about this.
I thought you might.
I jotted down the term human capital, and remember when we were personnel and then it became human resources and now it's we're just capital.
Yeah,
I mean, there's a part of me that appreciates that he was so forthright about his thinking here, because it allows me, as a person who lives pretty close to Silicon Valley and has over 20 years of experience in this space, to make some really smart decisions about what companies I'm willing to work for, what companies are not on my list.
Yep.
Like when I've changed jobs in the past, I'm fortunate to in this industry have enough experience, have enough contacts, have enough skill to be able to prioritize some of the intangibles when I look for a new company, when I look for a company I would like to work for. And one of those really important things for me intangibly is the culture. It is the leadership. It is what they think of their employees. And when you straight up tell me that you think of your employees as human capital, like essentially like your engineering team and your artists and your designers and your producers and all those folks are the equivalent of like a chair or a laptop, that tells me things about what I would like to do, like whether or not that's a company for me. Just in general, this pandemic has been really, really hard on a whole lot of folks. And I think we've talked a bit in the past, and I know I've done talks on managing work-life balance in this industry, especially in games and in tech. In general, we're awful at it. Like, I think they said something like employees are working an average of 30% more while working from home. So, this represents such a complete lack of trust of your employees. Yes, there will be some folks who are going to take advantage or bend the rules or whatever, right? In any system, whether you're working in an office or not. And to operate in this way, and just the wording of that message, it was.
I know.
There's
so many gems, so many pearls.
There's so much about this that I think just so many layers. It's so much about this that just contributes to really toxic work environments and stuff.
Yeah.
And just things that are just not healthy for talented individuals or just for human beings to exist within. I can go on about this. I don't like it.
Yeah, right. I think that's a good. Travis, what do you think?
One last note. I thought it was really interesting that the three things he referenced were Harvard, the Netflix, and the Navy SEALs. Those are very different spectrums that he's going to try and legislate or justify this decision-making process.
Yeah. I see Travis giving me all that nonverbal communication there, man.
Yeah.
Travis just as a general rule, I need to work on that, because apparently I say a lot more when I'm silent than I do when I'm talking.
You have no poker face, Travis.
That's why when my friends said, "Hey, you want to join a poker game?" I said, "I most certainly don't."
Travis, I want to play poker with you. I don't even play poker, but I feel like I would love to play poker with you.
Yeah, because I have no interest in hiding my emotions. Absolutely none. even ambivalence. So with that in mind, this is the first time I heard about this. So this is my raw reaction. Okay. And I'm going to boil this down to, games, actually.
Good choice.
when I started, just doing game design, period, it started from my fundamental knowledge of D&D, right? And as I started to play more D&D, I realized that D&D was really centered around you actually taking your metal figures and moving them around on a board and beating things up, right? Mm-hmm. And so I understood that, oh, okay, they're trying to sell miniatures, they're trying to sell dice, they're trying to sell all these different things, right? And so the rules influenced your gameplay, right? When I started working at White Wolf, we said, well, we're trying to tell stories. And so our rules had less to do with like how much you moved during a turn. And it had to do more with how you establish a mood, how you're vibing with your other players. Are you telling a cool story? And so our rules influenced how the game was played. Right now, I don't know if you remember back in the day where bugs were like a bounty at Microsoft, and the more bugs you found, the higher you got paid, until they established like this sort of garage economy that was built on QA testers working in cahoots with their programmers to
they game the system.
They game the system, right?
That's what QA testers do, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So you start to boil these things down to, okay, these are the rules, okay? And so when you like Sinead was saying, like, she has enough experience, she's that damn good enough where she can actually interview the company that's interviewing her, right? It's important. That's important, because you have to see whether or not you're going to vibe with this culture. You're going to see whether or not so in a sense, when you're in that job interview, one of the things you're saying is, tell me your rules. Like, tell me how I'm being judged. Tell me how I'm being graded. Exola said, these are the rules. Okay. If you ever had that feeling that your work environment was Orwellian, okay, are they looking? Yeah. Well, congratulations, Exola employees. Yes, you are.
Yes.
Right. And so now they're responsible for the economy or the work, the work that results from their rule setting.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And thank you for letting your entire workforce know how they're being graded. So now they get to see whether or not that actually works or not.
Yeah.
My guess it does not.
Yeah.
Or they're going to figure out a way once again to game this system. Okay, so that they go, so this is what I'm being judged on, right? This stuff here. Okay, watch these next 6 months. It's going to be off the chain, and they're not going to understand why. And it's going to be all the people who are smart enough to play by their rules in a way where it looks like they're superstars, but they're really not.
Everyone's just going to be updating to Jira like crazy, but not actually fixing anything.
Right.
Yep. No, right. Totally. That is honestly what people are going to be doing to game the system. I remember back at EA, they try to do a bounty where they're like, hey, if anyone finds like, a crash or something like that during beta, then we'll give you like this extra $50. So people started sandbagging their crashes until we hit beta, and they're like, let me drop in all these crashes now.
I can pay my rent.
And so what I'm not doing is I'm not telling companies how to actually do their heuristics as far as what makes an ideal employee. But what I am saying is, it's great that you're transparent. Okay, now people who want to play that game will play that game, and the people who don't will leave. And what I can tell you though is that formula is not it. It is not it, right? I can't tell you what the perfect formula is, but that one I guarantee you, it's not it.
It's not even new. It's not even new, right? Like we've seen this sort of thing in the workplace before we were all working remotely. But the other thing that I think that's the other miscalculation that's being made here, and that a lot of companies are starting to really learn, is now that we're like in the tech industry, most of the tech industry is largely working remotely. This is something we swore we'd not be able to do like a year and a half ago, right? We can't make games remotely. It's 300, 400 person teams. We can't do, and we were forced to do it. And now we've been doing it, and we've been doing it relatively successfully. Like, don't get me wrong, lots of bumps and bruises, but relatively successfully in the long run for the last year and a half. And so that means that we can work remotely. And a lot of people have started changing their lives around remote work because we don't know when this thing is going to end. There's Delta variant, there's a Delta Plus variant, there's a Lambda variant. Get your vaccine, folks. Okay, just please. I would like to go into an office one day again. But what I think is going to happen, we're already starting to see it happen too, because a lot of tech companies are pushing to get people back in the office as soon as possible. And they're going to get really shocked that when they mandate people coming back in the office, suddenly it's like, whoa, what is my inbox filled with all these resignation? Like why would you not want to come back into the office? Oh, because you've modified your entire work-life balance around the flexibility of working from home. You can have dinner with your family. You can choose to go to the gym or do whatever people do in the middle of the day. You can choose to manage your work life around your life, and going back into an office doesn't really meld with that anymore. So I think that we're seeing a shift. And I think that a lot of companies that are gonna adhere to these sort of old ways of doing things, even when it's looking over people's shoulders. We can't look over people's shoulders literally in the office anymore, so we're gonna use weird metrics tracking to sort of digitally look over your shoulder. I think that's, like I said, like Travis said, you can absolutely do that. Yeah. But employees, especially skilled employees, have way more choice than they've ever had. They don't even have to move anymore. Yeah, you just change your login.
And it really, it just the thing that drives me crazy is how even I know we've been pushed into this work from home model, right? As a necessity because of the virus, but we keep constantly, at least over here in the States, trying to figure out a way to get back somehow to that old way of doing things, right? So we're well, we don't, people are working from home. So instead of trusting them and making sure that we're getting, specific work done, and I'm very big proponent of trust but verify, right? We kind of move to we ignore the trust part and we just focus just on verify, And for some reason we think, well, we should be able to just tell if somebody's doing their work by just looking at all these specific data points, which actually this company even acknowledged that there were a couple of different systems that they didn't use, that they didn't pull in there in terms of the data points they wanted to look at. And it just I just feel like you can't automate every single piece of work. Right. I threw a question here in the chat where I just said, because I saw somebody, I think put a comment on one of these articles when I was, looking at some of the stuff about Exola, and someone said, who's a better employee? The employee who takes 2 hours, gets their work done and goofs off for 6, or the employee who takes 8 hours to do the same amount of work? By the way, Exola is looking at it, they would fire the person who worked for 2 hours. And that doesn't really necessarily mean that that's, the worst employee. So we just need to we need to figure out a better way of being able to, I'm not saying don't monitor employees' work or something like that, right? But we need to figure out a better, intelligent way of doing it that isn't let's just see what the algorithm says, because clearly that's not, that's
not. I'll weigh in one last thing here, because you made a great point here, Sheree, which is to say, look, as a manager, I've always judged people who work under me by what they got done, not really how they got it done, right? Because people have different processes and effectiveness, really. But if you have an understanding between, the supervisor and the employee about what is expected, right? You're all adults. If they can do it within the time that you have boxed them in to do it, would you just leave them alone?
Yeah. Right?
Right?
No, because
like you're getting what you asked for. You're getting what you asked
that
for.
Micromanagement life, man. I'm telling you.
Yeah, it just doesn't make any sense. Like, how much time am I spending actually looking over your shoulder? Right?
Yeah.
Like, I got better things to do. If I don't have to look over your shoulder and you told me 3:00 is when I'm gonna have it, and I get it at 3:00, then what's the beef? Like, go sit down and relax, go somewhere.
Yeah.
Like, seriously.
Chill. It does make me wonder, like, I know EA was notorious. I don't know if they still do it, but when I was there for 10 years, we were notorious for having layoffs every single year. And sometimes we would have layoffs twice a year.
Do you think it is because some of our practices from an industrialized sort of workforce just still haven't really worked ourselves out of our collective sort of consciousness? Because what we're looking for now is intellect giants, right? Because we are doing less manual labor. We're doing, things that require like creative thinking and out of the box thinking at a higher level, rather than whether or not you flip the burgers. Because yeah, I can agree. Like, if you're flipping burgers or something like that, maybe you do need that moment to moment sort of supervision or whatever. But, in fields where it's more creative or things are just not done the same, just relax and judge people on whether or not they're effective.
I don't know. Flipping burgers is pretty not. It doesn't require a whole lot of oversight either. But no, I think this is a really interesting topic, and I think it also goes to what came to mind for me as someone who's managed cross-functional teams is I've got a background in engineering and art and design. I do production as my major discipline, but there's a difference in in measuring, in understanding like an individual discipline well enough to be able to measure someone's expertise and how well they're like where they are in their career. Because a junior programmer and a senior programmer, like folks who've been doing it for like 2 years versus like 15 years, that's huge. Are they fitting all these different like variables into how they're measuring someone's success? Because if I have a programmer that takes 8 hours to do something, like it might take them 8 hours to do something, but are they going to show up better than the senior programmer that took 2 hours to do the thing? Right? Like, I just wonder, even as someone who's been down and close, and I hate to use the term into the trenches because I hate using military terminology for making video games, but someone who's been in the trenches with a team, and saying like, hey, I'm working with folks every day, and I might not always be the best person to judge someone's expertise within their discipline. I might need someone in that management chain to judge their expertise within the discipline. And you're saying the CEO is doing it?
Yeah.
No, it just feels like it smacks of just a bad decision and poor execution. So.
Yeah, no, totally.
But Exola, you do you.
I think that this is, it's I think we expected to probably see a lot more of this, or at least to hear a lot more about this, because it doesn't mean it's not happening just because we haven't heard about it. So we'll see as we kind of keep, we're still in this kind of work from home / at least hybrid model. So we'll see, where we can continue to go with this. All right, we got one last story for folks. Shanae, can you give us your story here?
Oh, yes. Okay. So I think folks probably heard about this. I think it actually broke like last week or so, something like that. But it's been continuing in the entertainment sphere or whatever in the last couple of weeks. So Scarlett Johansson, who's the star of Black Widow, her movie just came out early July. She just filed a lawsuit against Disney, saying that she's not being properly compensated because Disney chose to release Black Widow not in theaters, but on Disney Plus. And that was a decision that she didn't agree to. So there's a whole lot of discussions going on around this. I think in the presumably in the movie and television industry, but also in the peripheral industries like us over here. Because her argument was, and if you guys follow the Marvel movies like my sister and I do, this movie was originally supposed to come out last year sometime, and then the pandemic happened, and it got pushed, and it got pushed again, and then it got pushed again, and I think again, and finally Disney said, okay, folks ain't coming back to the theaters the way we want them to. We're just going to put it on Disney Plus premium, $30, whatever. I paid that $30. I watched Black Widow. It was fine. I enjoyed it. But where Johansson is her argument against this is that she didn't have a deal with Disney about this being released in like on streaming, and she expected it to be released in theaters. And in fact, presumably her major argument here with is going according to the actual complaint. It said that her terms, which were originally finalized in 2017, before Disney Plus was a thing, she didn't negotiate terms around streaming. And her contract indicated that they would debut with a wide theatrical release, but it didn't specifically say exclusive theatrical release, it just said wide theatrical release. And people just sort of assumed, oh yeah, it's just going to be exclusive in theaters. So there's been at least one other lawsuit. I don't remember if it's been filed or at least been pondered, I think, by
being pondered right now. Emma Stone.
For Cruella as well. And I think this is it's going to come to a head a bit. But where this is opening up conversation is in thinking about because her argument here is, hey, a lot of movie stars and actors and when they negotiate their contracts, they negotiate such that if they have a certain, like if the box office release is huge, does really well, they get additional money. But when your movie doesn't get released to box office, because I don't know, there's a global pandemic that's ravaging the planet, and it just gets released to streaming, like what does good look like at that point? Mm-hmm. And it feels like right now there's no shared understanding across multiple streaming platforms as to what good looks like, if for nothing more than a lot of these streaming platforms aren't particularly forthright with information about how they, like, what their subscriber numbers look like and how they manage that and everything. So yeah, I think we're starting to see the opening up and shift of a new business model within this space. And I want to know what you guys think about that.
Well, look, I spent enough of my time in the Hollywood, grinder. Mm-hmm. And the one thing they'll tell you every time is it's not show friends, it's show business. Right.
Not show friends, show business.
And with that in mind, there are a few things that make this sort of unique, but then again, not, right? Like the coronavirus situation firmly can be called an act of God to some degree, right? It's a global pandemic. But at the same time, I don't think that's really what this was about. Because from my understanding of the story, her people were trying to talk to Disney and Disney wasn't having it.
Yep.
Okay. And then what happened is that because in Hollywood, when you're the talent, they make it very hard for you to like do business. And what I mean by that is like, you're usually not the person doing business. Your manager is, or your agent is, mm-hmm. right? And that's so that they could be the jerk and you could be the nice person, mm-hmm. right? So please believe that if Scarlett Johansson actually brought a suit, it is because they have tried to deal with this other ways.
Yeah.
Right.
No doubt.
And as a fact that has actually been the case. And I don't think anyone who is halfway observant, okay, can actually mount a defense as to why Scarlett doesn't deserve her money. Right. She has been down for Marvel in practically every movie. I mean, I think she's probably in more movies than Iron Man. I can't be sure, but she's earned this bag of loot. Yeah. And if you are going to adjust the rules, you can't be like one of your characters, Darth Vader, and say, I'm altering the deal and pray I don't alter it any further. That's not how this works. Doesn't it go
into what you said, show friends, not show business?
Like, yeah, exactly.
If the contract doesn't say streaming, then we can't be like, oh, we knew streaming was, we're good with streaming, right? Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll be honest. I picked this story because I thought it was interesting, not because I care about rich people and like to try and determine if rich people can get more money, but because I think it's interesting to see how it reveals incongruities around how success is measured when we tackle streaming. And it also sort of like, it also feels a little bit reminiscent of some of the sort of pushback around, like, what was this, like the late 90s or something like that, when like new technology started to really take hold on music streaming. And you saw, instead of like embracing that, the RIAA was like, let me sue everybody about this.
Yeah.
I don't want this new model to come in.
Let me sue my
like,
customers.
Yeah. Like, no, we're not gonna embrace this. We're not gonna try and figure out ways around this. We're gonna try and exist in the business model that we exist in right now, because everything else is risky and scary.
Yeah.
Like moving into that space. Like,
I guess
anyone, but it feels like we're back to like a little bit of where are we going next, and how do we respond to
everyone has a Netflix password. If you don't have yours, you stole one. But what I'm saying is that Netflix doesn't have more money than most countries. Okay, because there's not gold in there here. There's not gold to be found. And so and Disney Plus has been growing like at a crazy rate. Right. So you can't tell me Disney doesn't have money. Right.
Oh, they definitely have money.
So this was definitely them giving her the 2-finger salute. Right. And saying, what are you going to do about it? And the problem with that is that you don't do that in this day and age to, number one of your top talent. You don't do that to your top talent, and you damn sure don't do it when it's your top woman talent now, because that's doubly how you get in trouble nowadays, right? And so all I'm saying is that y'all should have handled this better, right? Because it is only going to get worse.
Yeah,
it might be a reason why they killed her off.
Yeah. The thing I'll say about this, and I know we got to move on to our long topic, is that like, the only frustration I have with it is that I see us once again trying to kind of move back to the way things were. It's like we have this chance. We're actually trying to like change this model. I actually commended Warner Brothers for saying, you know what, we are not even going to like play this game of trying to like force people back into the theaters and make them make a choice, based on like their safety. We're going to do this hybrid model. And I just wish that in general we would try to kind of like, move with the times, find a way. Like, I agree with you. Like, for Warner Brothers, they went back and renegotiated everyone's contracts. Disney decided to play hardball because Disney's like, nope, it doesn't say it. So we're not going to do it. And Disney's going to get dragged. And it's going to cost them probably more money than it would have if they had just renegotiated it. But
I'd be remiss in my industry knowledge, though, not to point out the fact that Warner Brothers did that without even talking to their talent.
Oh, no, yeah. Warner Brothers did it all right. No, I agree. Warner Brothers did not do the whole thing all the right way.
So they're going to be writing some checks, period.
They chose to beg forgiveness instead of asking permission, because let's be honest, they asked permission. A lot of folks were like, no, I want to go to theaters. They said, no. We're just going to send it to theaters, and then we're going to cut you guys some checks after.
Okay. All right. Let's jump onto our long topic. I know we were running late, so let's jump onto our long topic. We actually wanted to do like a little bit of a reprise of our conversation that we had last week, because y'all don't know this, but after our conversation last week, we probably talked about mobile for another 30 minutes, just off stage. And we were like, we should really just reprise this conversation. We obviously have a lot more to say about it. So if you didn't get a chance to see last week's discussion, I'm just going to mention, we talked about a couple things about what defines what a gamer is, how do people misunderstand like the mobile industry? And, there's always that internal conflict that we see between like mobile, and not just mobile, I'll say, but like mobile largely is kind of like fit into that whole concept of casual gaming. And like that versus what seemed to be like what usually is described as like hardcore gamers and stuff like that, which is usually thought to be like more like PC and console gaming. So we kind of talked about that in depth. If you didn't get a chance to see it, please go back and take a look. You can look on take a look at our discussion last week and get caught up. But we wanted
last week.
Yeah, it's just last week, But we wanted to continue that conversation, and we wanted to talk today a little more about actually designing for mobile and how it's different when you design for mobile versus like console or PC. And then also the piece about like, why the mobile industry is kind of misunderstood and kind of ignored often by game journalists. So as I mentioned before, we are calling this conversation Whales, Space Whales, and Minnows. I just made that up. I'm sorry. I made a part of it anyways. But why don't we start by talking a little bit about the difference in design? Like, what we kind of describe as like the compulsion loop versus the gameplay loop. Who wants to kick us off on this topic?
I'll try.
Sure.
Listen, you have a very vicarious relationship with your phone. You just do, right? I mean, you generally want to pick your mobile device. I'll say mobile because we'll include iPads and other things that are tablets and so on and so forth.
Let's not include Android though. Just sorry, Android.
Green texters, but you have a different relationship with it, right? And what I mean by that is generally you pick it up and you want your gaming experience to be shorter. And because you want your gaming experience to be shorter, you have to plan or you have to design for it. Quick in, quick out, right? It doesn't mean that you can't spend hours playing your mobile product. It just means that those in and out points need to be at a good 5-minute increments, sometimes even less than that, right? And we'd be dishonest if we didn't think that doesn't influence how you actually design a product.
Yeah.
Okay. You don't do that in your sort of your PC and your console, and so your console gaming. You can generally
have the consoles take 5 minutes to boot up.
To load. I mean,
let me reboot real quick. Now I'm rebooting again. Now I'm updating your controllers. Oh, we can play a game. I'm sorry.
Yeah, because if you really think about like what is the big innovation in this in this next phase of consoles, it's not waiting for
no elevators. No elevator.
That would be nice. Yes.
On the gaming side, gamers were like, "What?" But like as a developer, I was like, "Oh."
Right. Nope. So if you just boil it down to that, right? The thing that I care most about when I'm developing a mobile product is whether or not you can get in and out very quickly, right? And what can I do to entice you to continue to do that?
Yeah.
Right. And so that's why when people talk a lot of times in traditional sort of PC console terms, they say, here's a gameplay loop, right? And when you talk mobile, it's more compulsion oriented because compulsions are like this.
Yep.
Right. So when people start to get all up in arms about like how how they feel almost this compulsion to play a mobile game, right? I think that they're missing the point, which is that's exactly what we were trying to do. We're trying to get you to keep pressing that button, right?
Like a slot machine.
Yeah. And if you are, fantastic, because if you aren't, then you're using your phone to like buy movie tickets or something like that. And that's a loss.
No, you're absolutely right. Like and this is comparing it to a slot machine is a great analogy compared to everything within Vegas, right? Because not only do those compulsion loops, not only are we shooting for compulsion, but it's also those loops are really tight. You know, we have to get you in there, get you to have some fun or something that approximates fun, and then give you that reward so that you immediately understand what that's going to mean the next time you go in and the next time you go in. If the reward loop was the same as console, which can be like, hey, I started this quest and it's going to take me 2 real world days to complete, that just doesn't work on the mobile side. And Travis, you said something that was really interesting too, I think, when we're comparing Or it was either Cherie, or either you, Travis, or Cherie with the.
Oh, you don't even know if I said something interesting.
Okay, you said something interesting, and Cherie also said something interesting with the setup for the story.
Why do I have to share it though? Can't I just
Lord
have my own
Travis,
interesting? Okay.
you got that Mortal Kombat. I have a real world Mortal Kombat thing right here. All right, this one came from Midway. You just got a fake thing back there. All right, so
I did Midway work back in the day.
I actually have a question for y'all though. By the way, I actually have a question for y'all. So, as I mentioned, we named this whale, space whales, and minnows. Can you describe? I know you're gonna follow up on what Travis or I said, one of us. But can you also tell us like what are whales, what are minnows, and then what the fake space?
You want to take this, Shanae?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit through it. We can talk about what space.
Since your sister came up with space whales,
I think it came up in our conversation last week, and I was like, "That's great. I'm using that for sure."
This is in relation to the concept of IAP, like in-app purchases and stuff, which drives a lot of the free-to-play offerings that are out there. So the concept is really ways of putting consumers within buckets, right? Mm-hmm. Like understanding who is in our audience and what their spending habits are. So the concept of minnows are there's lots of them in the ocean, in the ocean of your game. Ecosystem. There's lots of minnows, and they're probably not really feeding. They're probably not really contributing in significant ways to the economy of your game. They might be playing your game, but they are not monetizing. We call these games free to play. They are free to play, asterisk, because games do still cost money to make. So ultimately, when you say something's free to play, it doesn't mean that we're not trying to encourage people to actually spend money in it. You're just trying to find different ways to encourage people. This goes into the whole concept of how we design games for mobile versus how a game is designed for console that already probably had a $70 investment right up front. Now, minnows aren't spending as much money, or probably aren't spending any money. And then you've got, I just learned the term dolphins. I didn't even know dolphins was part of that. Dolphins are spending a little bit more money. And then you've got whales. Your whales are the people who are spending the most money in your game. Likewise, you probably have a lot.
How much money when we're talking about whales?
It varies.
It varies. Like I was doing mobile. It's been 10 years since I did mobile. And I was at a very small company that was like 50 people or something like that. And for some of our games, our whales were like $30,000 a month, which was great for our 50-person company. And we had like 5 or 6 whales for each of our games. And that was great for us. Now we're talking about like, this is 10 years, the market's 10 years more mature. And now you've got different ways of different business models, different ways of approaching the way in which we court consumers. And that's where I think the term space whales came up in our conversation last week, because there's something that's even bigger than whales. That didn't exist when I was doing this stuff. But this is where that's what we talk about when we talk about minnows, dolphins, and whales and space whales.
We're coining that. We're going to make that happen.
It's talking about different spending habits and the opportunity that exists in order to get people in spending in your free to play game so that you can, pay your payroll, make payroll for your employees the next month. Yeah. But so that's the explanation behind it. Just Travis, did you have a comment on that?
No, I really
want to fill in the gaps on any of that I said.
Well, no, I mean, that's correct. A lot of people object to those classifications.
Yeah.
For obvious reasons. I don't see anything bad about them, and not only that, I don't see anything wrong with like catering to them. And the reason is because every industry has them. Like Nike damn sure has space whales. Yes. Because they buy up every new Jordan that you get for crazy prices, right? So it happens. And look, to the degree to which you buy into this really depends on how important these items are to you, right? Like some people don't care about Jordans. I don't know why, but they do, right? And I didn't care about having options available to dress my in game or in my avatars until I was afforded the opportunity to get a lightsaber. And then I didn't care how much it cost. Right. So I could have been a space whale if it costs a whole lot of money to get a lightsaber. So I think that when people, look at these, sort of established sort of ways to make money in mobile gaming or in PC gaming or in console gaming, just examine the fact that, what, maybe that isn't your value or you don't place a high level of importance in those things, but other people do. And if they do, and people are making money and ain't nobody dying, then let companies be great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we have a question actually in the chat that was asking about why rely on certain psychological tactics like that as opposed to really creating games that have genuinely good narrative and are genuinely fun and innovative.
Okay, so I'll counter to that. What's the narrative in Pac-Man?
Pac-Man?
I mean, clearly.
No, I'm serious. I'm serious because back in the day, Pac-Man cost $60. Right. So where's the narrative there? Right. Where's the so
I don't think it's necessarily saying hey, you can't have a game that has no narrative. It's just saying why focus specifically on the compulsion loop piece of it as opposed to trying to actually build out and make it's
narratively
because that's not the party that some people want. Right. That's the simulation that person wants. Okay. And you can find that in this industry. Right. But if your compulsion, like I said, is building things, right, then play Animal Crossing and go build your island. Right. Some people could care less about your island. Right. But enough people do. Right. And that's really my point is there are certain products or certain games that I could care less if that city just goes up in flames, in the game. Yeah. Right. Certain people do and are willing to pay for that. And why not? If that's what you care about.
If I can also add, having a fun narrative, genuinely fun gameplay and compulsion loops, they're not necessarily mutually exclusive.
That's right.
Often are within the industry of mobile. It feels like they are because there's a whole lot of mobile companies that are jumping into a space where they see an opportunity for money. And yeah, it's easier to understand to do a compulsion loop than it is to find genuinely fun gameplay within a narrative space. And we're talking about narrative once again, when we start talking about things that go beyond a 5-minute assumed gameplay session, maybe a mobile platform is not the best platform for that. That's why you see people putting stuff on console and Steam and all kinds of other things as well.
And to respond directly to that even more, I have a favorite mobile game that's match 3. It's like Homescapes, right? Okay, now it's a match 3 game. Right. And so really all you're doing is going from level to level to level. It's like Sudoku at a high level. Right. Now, I probably would have stopped playing had it not been for the narrative that was attached to it, where I get to build, into my dollhouse. I get to get pets and I get to do all these different things. Right. But, I didn't need it, but it's nice that it's there.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Yeah. That's fair.
Yeah.
One quick note, because I think we can also continue. I think it's a great question, by the way. I really do appreciate
it. It is.
Yeah. Question because it is sort of the eternal argument against where the mobile gaming industry is going and stuff, or where the mobile gaming industry is. And it's probably, if Leon were here, he would probably be absolutely in the argument that these things are mutually exclusive just by nature of the fact that the majority of games out there imply pick one or the other. The one point I did want to make earlier before we start arguing about Mortal Kombat for a second was just in the realm of how mobile games and console games are often seen as almost not existing in the same industry, and we see that there's an article that came out on Kotaku just a couple of weeks ago that got earned the ire of a lot of folks who were actively in the game industry because it was titled the original title was something like new XCOM game or 2K releases a new XCOM game that looks like shit. Was the original title. It got updated to 2K launches an XCOM game that looks nothing like XCOM. And I thought the entire premise of the article was really interesting because comparing a mobile XCOM game and a console XCOM game Well, it's a great study to see like what different choices they made based on the platform that they're on. Like, yes, they're pulling from a lot of the same like lore and a lot of the same IP branding and stuff like that, but they had to make very different decisions because a typical XCOM game might not be Morble's probably not the right fit for like that kind of heavy strategy game engagement and gameplay. So anyhow, take a look at that article. There was lots of really good conversations that were going on, especially like breaking it down as like how people design for mobile and how people design for the console space, and also it's a great indication about how a lot of our mainstream gaming press is not giving us doesn't have that level of insight on stuff.
Yeah, I mean,
I want to shed some light.
My short answer for why, why if you had to pick one or the other as to why they may focus on the compulsion loop piece as opposed to actual like narrative and building out like good gameplay and everything like that, is capitalism. That's my one short answer for it. I know we're out of time.
I just want to make a point here, and I think it's important.
You have 1 minute to make your point.
All right, here we go. Here we go. Mobile games. You're always connected, right? You're attached to a phone that's always connected to a network. Okay, and because you're always attached to a network, people who make mobile games are constantly looking at where you're playing, how you're playing, who you're playing with, and whatnot on a constant basis. It never stops. And so that's why they're able to actually dial in a compulsion, because they know exactly what you're actually playing the game to do. Okay. Now, it hasn't been maybe a good 5 or 6 years since we can assume that the majority of the games that you're playing on PC and console are also similarly always attached to the network where people can collect the same amount of info, right? So the gameplay or the things that people are wishing mobile games have, okay, mobile games are going to start looking a lot more like your awesome console games now. And your console games are going to start looking a lot like your mobile games now, because now we have an equal playing
getting
field.
In the peanut butter?
Yes.
Oh, you got a Reese's cup right in the middle.
So to answer your question, user, give it about 2 years, and you'll start to see that blending of both of those things, where your console PC games will be a lot more compulsion based.
The great convergence.
Yes.
We're all going to wind up on Asgard, just like in Thor 2.
Yep.
I don't know what the Thor 2 reference is, but
I watched it last week.
Okay. I'm sorry.
It was not great.
All right. Well, I'm going to close up our show. Thank you, everybody, for the great conversation. Thank you for the questions. Please keep them coming. We love to hear questions so we can make sure we're answering what you folks want to hear. I want to give a shout out to Digital Click for all the creative they provide for each and every one of our shows. And if you want to learn more about techn00bians, hit up our website. That's techn00bians.com, techn00bians.com. Please follow us here on Twitch. And if you like our vibe, and we know you do, and you want to learn more about game development and everything geek, please consider subscribing to the channel. Also, please follow the Geekish Network on all major platforms. You can, we're on all major platforms, so please just search for the Geekish Network. Tonight on the Geekish Network, we have Pod Squadron. We'll be talking everything Star Wars. Tomorrow is Nerdtastic. And if you ever wonder what else geek we're talking about, you can check out the schedule of shows on TGN here on our Twitch page. That's it. So everyone, thank you so much, and we'll see you all next week. Bye.
Take care.